trying to hurdle that bar.
Damn.
Watch him put his right foot down. As you can
I
see,
think I broke my foot, Dave.
hurt.
No. Can we have a chat?
And we were speculating all day yesterday. How bad did he hurt his foot? That was the question. And first we thought he might have broken it. And then we thought it might be a sprain. And we really couldn't decide what had happened. Well, this is one of those rare instances that it was 10 times worse than we actually thought it was. Now, cue that back up again, Shiggy Reinscriber, the producer of this program. Chip Terrell is the director. And I haven't watched it since I know what really happened. But take a look at Steve's heel, his right heel, because that's what the problem is now. Do we have it? There he goes, down. He landed right on his heel. And ladies and gentlemen, it turns out this morning that Steve Mason yesterday on that jump, right here on this program, on the air, has shattered his right heel. He's in the hospital. He can't get out of the hospital until next week. Sunday night he's going to have surgery in which he's going to have pins placed in his heel to hold it together. Spent all day yesterday in the hospital. Dave, what's his name? Official Steve Mason lackey, was there every minute. And Dave, how are Steve's spirits this morning? As you can see, well organized and ready to go as usual.
He's doped up.
Well, you can come out, Dave. It's just TV. So what did the doctor say?
Well, the doctor was like a stand-up comedian almost. He came in and just looked at Steve and he goes, "Well, your foot is supposed to be like this, and now it's like this, and that probably wouldn't be good if it was like that. There's chips around the nerve.
So
that probably wouldn't be good if it was stayed like that." And he just kept on going for 10 in a row. It probably wouldn't be good if it stayed like that. And he seemed very confident though that he's done this and he could do it. He could cure this.
Right. Now, how many pins are they going to put in his foot?
I don't know, but it's shattered in 3 places.
Oh man.
I mean, it's when they say shattered, it was shattered.
You know, did he cue it up again, Scribe? Did he land on his heel? I thought, watch his right heel. That's the one that is beat up.
No.
Yeah,
It was.
We should have this cued all morning, but it's going to be hard to do. All right. Up. Yeah, I guess he did. I guess it just all the weight of the jump landed on his heel. That's, if you weren't watching the show yesterday, that was we had a cyclist in here. We got this bike show coming up here in Los Angeles, and we have a cyclist who was jumping over that bar on his bike, and the cyclist was making it look easy. The bar was right here, and he would just walk. What was that guy's name? Donahoe. Jason Donahoe. Jason had the bar right here, and he would just jump up over the bar like that. And so Steve thought, oh, that's no problem. I can do it. I tried it twice.
15 years younger than he is.
Yeah, I realized after 2 times that there's no way I was going over that bar. Steve insisted on continuing to try, and he probably tried it, what do you think, about 10 times?
Oh, yeah.
And he realized then that his shoes were heavy, so his shoes were weighing him down. So he took off his shoes and tried it barefoot, and the first barefoot jump is when he shattered his heel.
Did you notice like a weird energy with him yesterday morning? It was just, I mean, for some reason, this was so important to him.
What, to jump over the bar? Well, you see, Steve was never athletically, good at anything,
yeah.
which means, I mean, I know when I stopped playing basketball for a few years and then started again, I was getting hurt every 2 minutes. So, when you're 30, what is he, 30 stuff? Hey, good morning, everybody. The time is 6:04. This is The Big Show. I'm John Ireland in Los Angeles, and I have a big announcement that I'm going to have to make several times throughout the course of the morning. Steve Mason, my partner, who was here yesterday on the show, if you listened and watched yesterday on the program, you know that we had a cyclist in here, a bicyclist, Jason Donahoe, and he's part of the upcoming bike show here in Los Angeles that we'll be telling you about on AM 1150 for the next couple of weeks. It's on May 8th. Well, Jason was jumping all over the studio on his bike. This guy was unbelievable on his bike. He was jumping up on counters, and he was riding around. He jumped over 3 of us, Steve and our Toy Time girl, Jen, and I. He jumped over. Jason pretty much could do anything on his bike. Well, he set up a bar in here. It was about 42 inches high, I think.
Yeah.
Is that about right? 42 inches high, and Jason rode his bike and jumped over the 42-inch high bar.
3.5.
And I said to him, hey, can you jump over that just like a standing broad jump kind of thing? And Jason jumped over it with ease. No problem at all. Just jumped right over it. And Mason said, oh, I can do that. And he tried it a couple of times, and he kept knocking the bar over. And then I tried it, and I wasn't even close. And I determined early in the game that I wasn't any close at this. And Steve, though, was determined. He really wanted to jump over the bar. And he kind of turned into a bit. And I'd say he tried it, what do you think, Dave, about 10 times? Yeah. About 10 times, couldn't do it. And after the 10th time, he came to the conclusion that he had too much weight in his feet. His shoes were too heavy. So Steve took off his shoes and decided to jump barefoot. The Zola Bud of high jumping, apparently. Well, when he did, the first time he jumped with no shoes, he knocked down the bar, came down on his heel, on his right heel, and we thought at the time, he thought he broke his foot. I thought he sprained it. And towards the end of the morning, we were feeling pretty good that it was just a sprain. Ray Allen was here from the Milwaukee Bucks, who's sprained his ankle a bunch of times. And if you're watching on TV, there it is. And Ray thought it was a sprain because he could move his toes. And it didn't seem like it was his foot was too out of place. Well, after the show yesterday, Steve went to the hospital. And the doctor immediately diagnosed Steve with a shattered heel. His heel is shattered in 3 places. He is in the hospital. He has to stay in the hospital over the weekend and probably, I would think, Dave, a couple of days into next week, right? Yeah. He's going to have surgery on Sunday night. And he has to have pins put in his foot to hold his foot together. And those pins will be in there, I think Steve told me, for 8 weeks. He's going to have a... The pins are permanent, so he'll have them in there forever. I told him the cool thing about that was he'll be one of those guys that can go through the airport metal detector and set it off with nothing metal on him. He'll get to carry one of those cards. But I talked to Steve twice yesterday. Dave was there the entire day.
Eric.
And Schleppo went by for a while. And he was actually in good spirits. Matter of fact, I think Dave was running taped copies of the event all over town yesterday and to different television stations. And I think at least one of them, Channel 4, did something on it. And I know I talked to Fred Rogan's producer, Kevin LaBeach, last night, and I think Fred's going to go talk to him today.
Rogan called Steve.
Yeah, I gave him the number.
Yeah.
So Steve is out of action today, and probably Monday's show at the Forum, Steve and John on Ice, is in jeopardy. We are working on that right now to decide if we're going to continue with the live show from the Forum. As a matter of fact, did you call Tom Bowman?
Yeah, he's waiting for a call back.
And what did he say?
He's running the board. He's calling.
I'm calling now.
Oh, he's checking into that. So the live show on Monday morning may be in jeopardy because we have no Steve. When I talked to him yesterday, he was originally set to have surgery Saturday morning. And they've changed the surgery now to Sunday night because what happens is when you shatter your foot, or your heel in this case, the swelling is so big that they got to wait for it to go down. If you remember what happened to Baron Davis at UCLA when he blew out his knee, they had to wait for the swelling to go down before they could operate on his knee. And that's exactly what they're doing with Steve. They have to wait until the swelling goes down on his heel before they can operate, and they figure they'll be safe to do that on Sunday night. And he's going to be in a cast for 8 weeks. He said that if the Kings don't play like they did last night, he'll get a black cast in honor of the Kings. And speaking of the Kings, boy, that was exactly what we were hoping wouldn't happen. They got completely blown out. They just have to forget about it. But there was a lot of sports to talk about that happened last night. But obviously the big story around here is that Steve Mason has a shattered heel, shattered in 3 places. It will be operated on Sunday night. And as far as I know, that is I've been doing this for about 15 years. I can't ever remember a sportscaster actually being injured on the air. There was a guy, Who's the guy that does 2020? John Stossel. John Stossel one time was doing a story about wrestling, and he asked a pro wrestler whether or not it was real. And the wrestler boxed his ears. Hit him so hard that Stossel, to this day, has ringing in his ears. He sued the wrestler and won a ton of money. But that's the only time I can ever actually remember somebody getting hurt on the air like Steve did yesterday. Steve will be out of action for today, probably the beginning of next week. And what's interesting about this is I am going with the Lakers to Portland. I leave on Monday night, so it's obviously going to affect the show beginning of next week. And the powers that be at AM 1150, Extra Sports LA, and Fox Sports West 2 are planning on how we're going to adjust. And hopefully we'll have some answers for you by the end of the morning how this affects next week, particularly the live show on Monday. Now, speaking of things that happened last night, as you know, Shoshana Shashevsky is in St. Louis on a road trip with Elvis, the King, and Allison, our board op, who went back to root on the Kings, hopefully to spur them to a Game 1 victory. And if you saw any of this last night, I don't know if we have the tape, and you can show some of it on TV. This was as one-sided of a playoff game as you will ever see. The Blues absolutely hammered the Kings. Headline in the paper this morning, bad case of the Blues. 5 minutes into the game, it was 2-0. Craig Johnson got us a goal back to make it respectable, 2-1 at the end of the first period, and then the floodgates opened. The Kings were never ahead. They never looked good. The really bad news is that Stéphane Fiset was horrible, and Jamie Storr wasn't much better. You can't blame it all on the goalies, but in the playoffs, you got to have a goalie that can stop shots. Fiset was having all kinds of problems. I believe they took him out when it was 6-1. And they brought in Jamie Storr, and the Blues' first shot on goal on Jamie Storr was a goal. And so the Kings lose Game 1, and they'll get another chance tomorrow night, 4:30 our time, tomorrow afternoon our time, to try and steal a game from St. Louis. But the Blues looked great last night. The Kings looked horrible. And that was just a one playoff game that was played last night. The big story in the NBA is that the number 1 seed in the entire playoffs, the Utah Jazz, got killed in Game 1 of their playoff series with the Houston Rockets. Houston is the 8th seed, and it was the Rockets who played like they were the experienced team. Big game from Kevin Willis, big game from Hakeem Olajuwon. Charles Barkley played well. Mario Elie hit some key buckets down the stretch. Karl Malone had 25 for the Jazz, but Utah was never in it. They were down by 20 in the third quarter, and the Jazz completely get blown out at home in Game 1, which is great news for the Lakers if the Lakers can take care of business in their half of the bracket. If you're following the playoffs, Utah is in the top half along with Houston, San Antonio, and Phoenix, and the Lakers are in the bottom half along with Portland, Seattle, and Minnesota. And if Utah could get eliminated, the Lakers would all of a sudden be looking at an opportunity to have home court advantage in the Western Conference Finals, which obviously is huge. They would have to, I'm looking way ahead here, they would have to get past Portland, who they open up against tonight at the Great Western Forum, in a game you can see on Fox Sports West. They open up against Portland in a best-of-5. Then if they win that, more than likely they're going to have to play Seattle. And then if they get past that, if Utah could somehow get tripped up, now Houston's got the home court, and they've got Game 1, and Game 2 of that series will be Jazz and the Rockets. Everything else last night went pretty much as expected. Steve and I both predicted that San Antonio would beat Phoenix. They did in Game 1 at Phoenix. Tim Duncan, monster game, 28 points in the second half, including 18 in the fourth quarter. And San Antonio beat Phoenix. And pretty much the rest of the games went as expected. There weren't a ton of upsets. Montreal beat Pittsburgh in overtime, which is a 7 seed against a 2 seed in hockey. But a lot of people think Montreal has a chance to beat Pittsburgh because they're young and they're fast and they have Andy Moog, a good goalie. But other than that, everything went pretty much as expected. Charlotte beat Atlanta, even though Atlanta beat Charlotte 4 times straight during the season. Atlanta came back and went in the tank. And then in the only other game, Indiana all over Cleveland. Absolutely killed them. 106-77. In baseball news, the Dodgers continue to slide. The good news is Hideo Nomo did pitch well. Nomo threw great, but they didn't score any runs again. They lose 2-1. And the Padres won again. So the Padres are just an absolute juggernaut. And the Angels did not play. So the Dodgers lose. The Lakers play tonight at the Great Western Forum against the Portland Trailblazers. It's the same team they opened up in the playoffs last year, except they have a new coach, Mike Dunleavy, instead of P.J. Carlesimo. And they have two new starters, Damon Stoudemire, who replaced Kenny Anderson, and Brian Grant, who is also in the starting lineup. And if the Lakers